It's a little unfair to compare hiking in one small region to hiking in an entire massive country, but we're doing it anyway. The most noticeable difference is access. Hiking in the Dolomites is insanely accessible. You can take buses, cable cars, trains, etc. to hiking trails. In the US, your only option is typically a car with the rare opportunity to take a bus and maybe a train to a place like the Grand Canyon. However, to access most hiking in America, you need a set of wheels to get to trailheads, and sometimes you even need a burly 4x4 vehicle. In the Dolomites, you don't even need a driver's license to hike. Bus systems make it totally possible to do things like summit world-class mountains, go on epic thru hikes, or just enjoy a casual day hike. Although I recommend a car for hiking in the Dolomites, it lets you get a really early start. It's certainly possible to use public transportation. The next biggest thing is infrastructure. The Dolomites are stuffed with infrastructure for hiking. But, and this is a surprising thing, it actually isn't a good thing. I won't lie to you, I totally appreciate having a cable car to tote my tired tushy downhill day 5 of climbing mountains in Italy. And of course, I love my cappuccino and fresh baked strudel after sweating like 2 mice getting down in a wool sock on a via ferrata. Some people get excited to see the car in the US after you're done with the hike. In Italy, you get excited to see that. That's a refugio, which is slang for coffee and pastries. We certainly can learn a thing or two from Italy in the US about how to hike in style, but it can be too much. Even the locals I spoke to said it had been taken too far. All of that infrastructure really dampens the wilderness vibe. Solitude is not common in the Dolomites, even as an early riser, but you can't avoid the crowds. It's got a busy feel with plenty of amenities, but we never really felt like we were out in the wilderness in the way we can in the US. If you're hesitant about steep uphills, have a young child, or accessibility needs, then the Dolomites can provide you with an incredible experience to get into the mountains. Which brings me to my next point, regulations. Backpacking, like put your tent on your back and go for days, really isn't much of a thing in the Dolomites. In fact, it's actually illegal. A lot of locals I met think that this sport is totally insane. And why the heck would you do that when you can have a refugio cooking you a farm-to-table hot meal every night? Things are far more regulated than in the US, which I thought was really surprising because #lawyer culture. Here in America, we have our supposed freedoms or whatever, so it's a lot more common to poop in a bag and spend the night in a lightweight tent eating overly processed freeze-dried foods than it is in Italy. Another weird thing to note is the dog culture. It's common to hike with dogs in the Dolomites, which honestly surprised me quite a bit. But you know what isn't common? Leaving your dog poop on the trail, which here in America is expected. Signage is also much improved in the Dolomites. Oftentimes you'll have multiple trails leading to the same place, and it can be a little confusing to know where you're at. That's because you have grazing livestock on the trails in the summer months, and there is a lot of overuse. However, at every single major junction, you are going to expect a sign that has things written in 2 different languages and tells you times and distances. It's actually quite amazing. And you're always going to know when you're on the right trail because they mark the rocks by painting the Austrian flag on them. Sounds confusing? Of course it is. The Dolomites should be viewed as their own layered cultural historical area. In fact, Latin people are a unique culture that resides here, and knowing if somebody aligns more with Italy or Austria in this region isn't always that obvious. So in an effort to create some awareness around this brutal and touchy history topic, they use the Austrian flags to mark trails. And side note, this used to be Austria. Permits. America has a really intense permit system that's gaining in popularity throughout the states. Things like timed entry permits, permitted hikes, competitive backcountry camp spots are the norm here. In the Dolomites, there are areas that definitely require reservations, and trust me, you do not need to visit those to have a good time. And if you want to stay in a refugio, good luck getting one booked after January. But other than that, you just show up and go. There aren't fees to enter most national parks, and it's a pretty simple system to navigate. Of course, if you're visiting the same Insta-famous spots everyone else visits, expect some red tape, but here's the biggest secret to visiting the Dolomites. You don't have to go to those places to see incredible scenery. In fact, I'd honestly avoid them. There are gorgeous spots everywhere. And waiting in line on a hiking trail to take a picture doesn't need to be on your itinerary. I specialize in beating the crowds at places all over the world. And if you want to learn my secrets, sign up for my newsletter in the pinned comments down below.